first, how are you? Just go a little bit how you've been since we last spoke. But also, the first question I had today was like, I know that you were born in Africa, so was I. Africa, we made it. We made it from Africa to Europe. So yeah, it's talking about how your upbringing was in Africa. I know that we kind of touched on it last time, but yeah, get a little bit more into depth about how that was for you, and also obviously you being here. So just a quick background. Also, how are you?
Thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm okay. I'm managing. Things I can't complain. I can't complain. Yeah. So my journey to here. So born in '96
First of
in
all,
South Africa,
which part?
Durban, South Africa. So the east coast of South Africa, and I was born just after apartheid ended.
Really?
Yeah. So I think it was abolished in 1994, and Mandela came into power, and then I was born just after. So honestly, my early childhood is lovely.
First,
Like
what is apartheid? Who don't somehow
Apartheid.
don't
So
know.
this is the regime that was in place in South Africa. That it was a regime of segregation, basically. So it segregated all the different races. In South Africa, we have 4 official race groups. So black, white, Indian, and colored are the 4 racial distinctions there. And I fall into Indian and colored, but technically, I guess colored because I'm mixed.
So what's coloured and there was difference between coloured and black?
Colored is a mix of different things, and black is native. So there's lots of different variations within each of those groups as well. But the 4 main race groups that they identified that would be on your like documentation and stuff with those main 4. And yeah, so I grew up in Durban, which is quite an Indian area because that's where my mum's ancestors are from. And yeah, and we'll talk a bit more about the exhibition where I got to share that. But yeah, so that's where I'm from, the East Coast. And then I moved here when I was, I came straight into GCSEs. So
like 13, wait, maybe a little bit
older, a little bit older. I think 15?
15.
Around
Okay.
15.
Okay.
So
Let's talk a little bit about
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about their upbringing in Africa, because I think, like I told you before, I rarely find people that were born in Africa and I really get to talk about how that was, because I was born in Africa, but I came when I was very little, so there's like vague memories of it. But I don't want to know if your experience is similar to mine, because I remember, if I can close my eyes and go back to back in the day, how it was for me. It was a lot of like just playing outside. It was a lot of like kind of like simple living, you know, kind of just being outside, running around. I have a memory of me running through, do you know like sugarcane? Those, like I have a memory of me running through a sugarcane farm, just like playing around all day in the sugarcane farm, like hiding, and then like at the end of the day taking one, it must be someone else's farm, but taking the sugarcane home and just like crunching on it. And like that was just the lifestyle there, and it was just like a free running, free flowing. You're kind of just like outside all the time and just kind of really in touch with nature almost. You're never kind of in the house. What was that like? What was it like for your early memories of South Africa?
Okay, earliest memories, very, very similar. I think, God, is it because it was back then? Is it like rosy retrospection? Is it because we were children? Like, what is it? But how we view it is, I think, the most important thing. And so it's funny you mentioned sugarcane, because so my ancestors were indentured laborers who farmed sugarcane. So sugarcane was also quite central to like just Durban, like the place that I'm from. And when I went to visit last, we drove through. So I was visiting my aunties in a place called Belito in Durban, and it's really nice. They built up like really nice houses, and it's quite developed now. But you're still driving through the sugarcane fields. Like there's roads and stuff built, but on either side you can see the sugarcane fields. So it's crazy how much it's developed in not that long a time. Like realistically, it's not that long a time. But it has come so far, and it's developed as a place. It's developed with the cultures that have come, and Goodness.
Did you see that when you were younger, like other cultures like coming into the place? Because I didn't
So-
really see that for myself.
So where I was, I think so. I was in an Indian area, and there were only Indian people, black people, and a few colored people where I was. There were no white people in my area. So when I was really little,
Yeah.
I didn't have much exposure to white people really. And it sounds strange, but South Africa, because it was segregated, it still very much is like that. And in the towns where you live, the segregation is quite prominent. When you go into the cities and you go to the big shopping malls, then you'll see a mix of people. But in terms of living areas, it's still quite segregated. So,
So growing up, were you just like, obviously you said like the colored people and all these, the black people, did you have a recognition of like, oh, this is the culture I'm living in? Was it like prominent enough for you to recognize the difference between those groups of people, or was it like, these are my friends, I just hang out with?
yeah, so there's distinct differences, but there's also such a strong shared culture at the same time, because differences are very, like South Africa is known as the Rainbow Nation, because you grow up amongst everyone, you know. And even though you might not live amongst everyone, when you come together, it's a good time. It's great. But that was my early childhood. It wasn't like that before. Well, there were elements of it before me, obviously, but just from what I knew, it was harmonious, you know. But yeah, it's different experiences for different people.
It's so interesting you say that too, because like for me, right, just thinking back, so like this is why this conversation is so important, because like I now have memories, and I have memories of me. Do you know, obviously in Africa, like this woman would carry the child in the backs, and we walk and running around. So this is me very, very young, but I have a memory of me and my mum out in the streets of Africa. I think her selling wherever she sold, and me on her back. And I think that experience gave me so much. Looking back now, it gave me so much. I guess, I don't even know what the word is, but just like interaction with just the life of Africa, the people of Africa, because there is no separation between kids and adults. You know, the kids will hang out where the adults will hang out. So there's like a vivid kind of like upbringing, vivid like kind of like growth of me just being around adults all the time, hearing the conversation they had, kind of like and growing up in that kind of culture and atmosphere. And it's so, I think it's such a powerful thing. I think that's what makes African like so kind of like, I know we'll talk about this later, so kind of like intimately connected with struggle, because like the struggle that I grew up when I was a kid, it was so vivid to me, and it was so ingrained to me very, very young, that this is just the life that we live. You know, we have to hustle, we have to go this, it's really like the blaring sun is just part of that. You know, and to have that kind of be my reality for like 5 years of my life, and even going to school, like I want to also ask about that too, like what the education system was like and what kind of things you learned at school. Because I remember for me, even going to school was like super weird, because it was like really, really strict. Like they would like beat the kids, and every time
It wasn't like, well, I think it was outlawed.
Sorry,
Corporal punishment was crazy, but I was very good.
Yes.
I did all my homework. I was a really good child.
Yeah.
Teacher's pet.
Yeah, same.
So
Same.
I didn't get hit, but I used to watch other people get hit, and it was brutal. I think when I was in grade 3, I had an experience with I was standing in the line to go into our school library, and someone was talking at the back of the line. The teacher, library ma'am, I can't remember her actual name, but we used to call her library ma'am. And she came to the back of the queue, and she slapped me and the child next to me, and across the face. And I was shocked, because I never got in trouble, and I wasn't even talking. It wasn't me. And I went home and I told my mother. By the next week, 2 weeks, I was out of the school. Really? She changed my school. She said, I think she came in and she said, she spoke to the head teacher, and she said, "You're not laying a hand on my daughter." Some parents were very lax with it and allowed it to happen, but my mother, she was like, "No way, you're touching my child."
Yeah.
And my mother never hit me. My granny used to hit me though.
Yeah. They don't fuck
at
around.
home, but you know, like,
discipline, right?
It's discipline. It was just the culture there. But in schools, hitting someone else's child, is a no-no.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that.
You mentioned you're a teacher's pet. What kind of
Yeah.
lessons? What was your favorite lessons? Do you remember how you were taught and stuff?
So one thing that was very difficult for me when I moved from there to here was that history, I had only really known South African history, because you're only really taught South African history in school. And here I came, and I think the topics were
Henry VIII and shit. Yeah.
no, not even. I didn't learn things about English history. I learned about the Nazis.
Oh, really?
So I was straight in like the deep end when I came here, and I was like, whoa.
They did all of that.
Like, this is like, you guys were suffering as well. Like, I knew about South African suffering. I didn't really have a grasp of the rest of the world and what was happening in the rest of the world, because just because the history in South Africa was like in schools, it was taught, it was quite local to us. So yeah, that was very interesting. But your point earlier about community and being such a strong part of your community and so involved even as a child, I felt that as well, because I think we speak about this all the time, how here it's a very individualistic culture, and we come from very collectivist cultures where everyone's in everyone's business, and like it's so, when you serve the community, you're not serving yourself. It's not a self-serving way of life there. It's for everyone. Like, I eat, everyone eats. And to even taking care of our elders and things like that. So it's been such a contrast coming here. There are elements here where there's similarities, but overall I think it's quite like the collectivist versus individualistic undertones everywhere.
It's so crazy.
It's hectic. It's hectic, yeah.
It's so fascinating too for me, because I need to get another mic. It's so fascinating too because for me too, it's like, and I think I tried to write about this, but I need to maybe do a more clearer piece on it, about the difference between the collective mentality and the individualistic one, and like the pros and cons of both, and how one of them will obviously foster a certain type of mentality in me. You know, it's like when I go back home, I love the collective atmosphere, but it is really invasive because people will be in your business, and like a lot of the culture, a lot of the conversation I have with my aunties, it's about the perspective of me. People say, oh, you don't want them to see you like this, you don't want people to think this of you, and it's like, I don't care what people think of me, but there you have to, because that's how they live, and that's what they, you know, like, because they're so involved in the community, they want the people to view them positively. Going to church on a Sunday, so everyone will see you go to church. If you don't go, it's bad, right? What was that for you, to have that kind of a collective understanding, collective community, and to come here and to see the difference, and was that a struggle for you to change?
Yo, it was hard. And I'm still struggling with it, I think, because when I go home in like the house that I live in, that culture is still there.
Same.
You know,
Yeah, it's weird,
and it's like
isn't it?
entering another little bubble.
Yeah.
And you leave the bubble, and it's scary because you're facing all the culture here. And it's a big adjustment to make. It is. But yeah, I relate absolutely with the church. And I adore my family. I adore everything about them. I grew up very like staunch Catholic. You do not miss mass. Like, you don't miss church. That's a non-negotiable, and you will get shouted at like till you're out that door.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
My
So
mom literally said, I will come and drag you from the bed if you're not up by this time. She would
exactly.
literally
Yeah,
speak
you
to
don't
me.
play.
Yeah.
You don't play about God there. And I think coming here and my experience of church here, I haven't really felt a
same,
community. And this is only, it's not speaking for all churches here. It's just a few that I've been to. I think this church that I'm at the moment has been the most community that I have felt, because we have a new priest, and even the last priest was really nice. But I think it's also because when we did move here, we were moving around quite a bit. So we moved to different churches, and it wasn't, it wasn't the same. And also growing up, I think my grandparents, so my mom's mom and dad, held mass at their house for 20 years before I was born. Yeah, before I was born, because there wasn't actually a church local to us. We had one, like a bigger one, a little bit further away. But in our community, my granddad commissioned the building of a church down our road. And then that ended up being like our main parish. And that was like, that was family, that was community. Everyone went to that church. Your hairdresser went to that church. Your friends, like the same people you went to school with, all go to the same church. So the community was very, very strong. And that was such, like, literally going to church every Sunday, and that's your family. Like, it just becomes your family, your community. And I think leaving that, not just for me, though, for my mom, for everyone who experienced that, it's just a very big transition to make. And, yeah.
I was going to ask, what's one thing that you miss about South Africa? You've talked a lot about the different...
The community.
I was going to say,
yeah.
Probably the community, right?
The community, my family, my friends. Yeah, it was tough. It's tough leaving anyway, like moving country. But I left when I was in high school, so all my friends, and that's the point where friends are like everything to you.
Yeah, exactly.
That being said, I'm grateful for the opportunities that I came here and I was given that I never ever would have had in South Africa.
Like what?
Like university. I don't think I would have been able to afford university in South Africa. It's a very selective system for university. Unless you have the money to pay for the fees up front, you can't really go. And we didn't have the money to pay for university. I think my mum and my auntie, my mum and her sister, relatives of ours paid. I don't know who exactly, I can't remember, but relatives of ours paid for their university. Or, loans were like, there's no student loan system there. Maybe there is now. I hope there is now. But at the time there wasn't for me. Whereas here they give the student loan. So I'm grateful that I was able to go to university and get the level of education that I have now. It would have been hard. It definitely would have been hard back home.
Let me go off that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned university, and one of the things I wanted to talk about, nice segue into what you did in your master's. So I know that you obviously came over here, and one of the subjects you did was art, and you were exposed to this whole world of just different types of art. And I know we spoke about it many times. You've introduced me to African art. I said that last time, and I really do mean that. I think the fact that you've been able to do that, and I said that off mic, that I was really only European art. That's just the small kind of window into art that I had. I was mostly focused on obviously African art, writings and stuff like that, and knowing about Afro-American, Afrocentric kind of writing when I was growing up. A lot of like Malcolm X, a lot of James Baldwin. I knew kind of Basquiat, but again, all these people are like American perspectives of African culture, and so yes,
And that's a whole struggle.
and that's a whole struggle in itself. It's like a whole different tinted lens of it. But back to the point, the fact that you did art and you kind of studied that. Talk to me a little bit more about that. What was that like for you to start doing art, falling in love with art, and what were some of the things that you really enjoyed on your masters?
Okay, so